got a job at Kingsbury's, like I did in the late 60s, you felt you were going to retire there because it was that good of a place to work.
In my mind, a happy place to work. And from a manager's standpoint, I probably didn't realize it at the time, but I had it made. It was easy.
We always had a summer picnic. Everybody came, families, grandkids, and everybody. You didn't pay for a thing.
The human asset was a valuable thing, not just brick and mortar and machines.
The thing that hit me the most when I first got on the floor, I thought I was in New York City. It was so busy, you couldn't turn around without bumping into somebody.
Kingsbury had one standard that I'll never forget. If there's a surface on the machine big enough for a 500-pound man to stand on, build it to support him, because he will. So it was, everything that we did was built to last.
In part, Kingsbury built Keene and built Cheshire County economically.
In the latter part of the 19th century, a young man in Keene, New Hampshire by the name of Harry Thayer H.T. Kingsbury purchased the Wilkins Toy Company with the financial support of his grandfather, Edward Jocelyn.
I don't know all of the various enterprises that Edward Jocelyn was involved in. I know he was involved in the Fay machine, and I know that he built furniture. I got the impression that, like many people of his time, he was an entrepreneur who would kind of invest in other people's ventures, and as well as his own.
I think probably Mr. Jocelyn saw something of himself as a younger man in his grandson, both being interested in manufacturing and production and using ingenious methods to create new products to sell.
Under H.T. Kingsbury, Wilkins Toy Company became very well known for, among other things, its cast iron model transportation toys. In the early 20th century, Wilkins became the largest producer of toy automobiles in the country. Edward Jocelyn Kingsbury, the eldest son of H.T. and his wife Lottie Friend, and a member of the MIT class of 1915, joined the company after college. While at MIT, Edward's senior thesis, design of an automatic chucking, drilling, and ferruling machine, was inspired by the making of wooden handles for garden toys. It was clear that for him, innovation was job one. Edward soon learned of a challenge with producing wheeled cast iron toys, and expanding on his collegiate drilling experience, created a 2-spindle vertical drilling machine with a weight feed.
That automatic drilling machine became a reality that helped drill holes in the wheels of the toys that were made out of cast iron, and the drill bits kept breaking off. And this automatic drilling machine was pressure sensitive, so the drills could go in and out and not break off to drill the holes for the axle in the toys.
With that technology, they expanded their capabilities and offered a sensitive feed drill unit and became known as a manufacturer.
The friction drive drilling machine performed the task so well that within months of its introduction, Kingsbury was contracted by the U.S. government to drill and tap a special wingnut for the country's fledgling Air Corps.
My wife's grandfather was there, and he was actually working supporting the war effort when Kingsbury participated in supplying equipment to the military.
The original machine used to produce the wingnut is now a part of the Smithsonian Institution's display of historic machines. Believing that other manufacturers would find uses for the machine, the company, now known as Kingsbury Manufacturing, put it on the market. Some were sold, but more importantly, manufacturers started asking for machines to solve other drilling problems, and the Machine Tool Company was born. Edward began redesigning his machines to increase productivity and efficiency. He created new ways to adjust the variable feed pressure and added attachments to allow the machines to multitask.
So the progression of the Kingsbury Machine Tool Company, their offering started back again shortly after the war effort. They would come out with a small single-purpose stand that maybe would drill or maybe drill and tap a component. And over time, the need for more volumes, more operations, forced the company to improve their offering with adding an index table which allowed multiple operations to be performed on a customer's component so that it would all be completed when the workpiece came off the unload station.
While HT and his other son Chester managed the toy company, Edward focused on research and development of machine tools. In 1921, with demand for custom drilling machines increasing, Edward enlisted the help of Gunnar Swanberg, an engineer out of Detroit. By 1926, the machine tool business had become so good that it required a separate building. And in 1928, Kingsbury Manufacturing became two disparate companies, Kingsbury Manufacturing, which produced the toys, and Kingsbury Machine Tool. Kingsbury Machine Tool was built around one operation, drilling a hole. But not just drilling a hole, drilling a better hole. Edward's first breakthrough involved reducing pressure at the point of attack, allowing drills to advance slowly through hard spots in cast iron, preventing costly bit breakage and production stoppages. Edward expanded upon basic drilling to design specialized drill heads for taps, reamers, counterborers, and numerous variations. Twist bits could have pointed or flat bottom ends, depending on whether complete penetration was desired. Taps created threads for bolt mating, with multiple types based on hole specifications. Counterbore bits created indentations for various bolt head types, V-shaped, round with hex depressions, hexagonal, ensuring bolt heads sat flush with material surfaces. Reamers smoothed holes to exact specifications, while smoothing bits prepared surfaces for bolt placement. Kingsbury tools prevented breakage while achieving extreme accuracy, essential for producing hundreds of identical, interchangeable parts daily with thousandth of an inch precision. Machines handled holes ranging from hair-thin to large diameters at rates of 1 to 3 parts per minute. Parts feeding evolved from manual placement to automated feeders, reducing human involvement to simply loading the feeder mechanism. Business continued to flourish, and a 2-story addition needed to be added to the plant for a larger tool and engineering department. By 1928, the company's daily output was equal to the total production of the first year in 1921. Customers included Singer Manufacturing, National Cash Register, and Dodge Brothers. Machines were being sent around the country and as far away as Europe, Japan, and Australia. From the beginning, the Kingsbury family put an emphasis on treating their workers fairly and with respect. As profits grew through the 1920s, so too did the staff, and they were sometimes called upon to work night shifts or work overtime multiple times a week. To stimulate goodwill and a positive attitude, Kingsbury's formed a club promoting the athletic and social welfare among the employees. Meetings were held twice a month with a dinner served, along with speakers, motion pictures, or local entertainers. And teams were put together to compete in athletic leagues in and around Keene. A few years later, the country was ravaged by the Great Depression. The stock market crashed on October 29, 1929, and continued on its downward path until 1933. In 3 years, industrial profits dropped by nearly 80%, and manufacturing employment dropped by 1/3. The economic challenges had not immediately affected Kingsbury Machine Tool, but by 1931, a sudden drop-off in business resulted in an annual loss. The automobile industry was a burgeoning field for the company, but also one of the industries most affected by the economic downturn. At Kingsbury, layoffs came about in 1932 along with a reduced work schedule for remaining staff, and management reportedly took little to no salary during the Depression.
Lottie, who had her own resources, was able to bankroll the company to make up for what it couldn't sell in toys.
They would say, "How much do you need?" And someone would say, "Well, I can get by on a couple dollars." Okay, they'd pay him a couple dollars and move on to the next person.
In 1933, Franklin Delano Roosevelt became the president and put his focus on regrowing the economy through his New Deal policies. While not all of his new policies worked, enough did to get the nation's fortunes turned in the right direction. This was true at Kingsbury as well, as customers' needs began to expand. Heavier machines were built. Engineering problems arose and were solved. Kingsbury developed its own solenoid for tripping units electronically instead of by hand or compressed air. Longer strokes, automatic lubrication, overload protection, and provision for changing from drilling to tapping were called forth depending on manufacturers' needs. The Kingsbury plant's proximity to the Cheshire portion of the Boston and Maine Railroad served as an important cog in the transportation of the company's machines. But in the 1930s, the plant's proximity to Beaver Brook would provide some serious challenges. In March of 1936, several inches of rain fell in a short period and also melted several inches of snow that was on the ground, resulting in devastating floods across the region. The flood caused millions of dollars in damage, much of it in the form of destroyed bridges, including several that connected Cheshire County with Vermont across the Connecticut River. All of the brooks and rivers in downtown Keene overflowed their banks. 2 years later, the Great Hurricane of 1938 hit Keene. As the Sentinel reported, quote, "Scores of automobiles were crushed in the streets by falling trees. Many houses are wrecked. Hundreds of the city's beautiful elms lie toppled in the streets. All industry is crippled. Factory roofs torn off and water running through plants. The first church spire was blown down." End quote. Kingsbury did not escape the wrath of the storm, but the damage was repaired as quickly as possible, and the plant was up and running just in time for the next big thing, World War II. Kingsbury had had the government as a client since the early days of the drilling machines, but that interaction went into overdrive with the onset of the Second World War. With so many resources going to the war effort, the toy factory was forced to shut down.
During World War II, the price of steel had gone up, of course. And after the war, the government froze the price of consumer goods like the toys. So we couldn't raise the price of the toys, and it was no longer profitable to manufacture the toys. So they converted the entire factory to just the machine tools. So the last toy was made in 1945.
But the Machine Tool Company took off. To support the war effort, Kingsbury was producing machines for fuses, aircraft engine parts, rifle bolts, and other gun components. A battery of machines was designed to make M1 rifle parts. After the war was over, a new member of the family joined the business, Edward's nephew by marriage, Charlie Hanrahan.
He was over there as an aircraft mechanic during World War II. When we came back, he actually, when he worked at GE, I'm not sure what he did, but he was mainly manufacturing. He knew how to make the parts, and he was very comfortable with the people on the floor.
He used to walk through the whole shop, and anytime we had a new employee, he would want to get to know the employee. So he would come over and say, "Hey Ken, who's that new fellow?" So I would tell him. Maybe the following week he may ask the same question until he really got to know him.
Charlie, it was, the second day you worked there, he knew your wife's name, your kids' names, your parents' names. It's just the way he was.
He used to say that before he'd go down on the floor, he had the secretary make him up a list of all pictures. He'd have pictures of everybody, and he'd go down through and look at all the names of the and do it with the pictures each time he went down to the department, and he'd try to memorize the names as best he could, and he'd go down and he'd call these people by their first names because he had just studied the photograph, and he got the reputation of doing that that everyone thought he knew everybody's name, but he had to work at that.
The post-World War II era brought a wide range of new technologies to the automobile consumer and greater sales to the major manufacturers. The 1950s were the pinnacle of American automotive manufacturing and helped shape the United States into an economic superpower. By the end of the decade, there was one car for every 3 U.S. citizens, and 1/6 of working Americans were employed directly or indirectly by the industry, including the workers at Kingsbury Machine Tool. The company developed strong relationships with the big three automakers, Ford, GM, and Chrysler, and those relationships paid dividends for the staff at Kingsbury.
GM, Ford, and Chrysler were primarily the major focus of the metal cutting equipment.
When I would go into a Chrysler plant or a GM plant, they loved Kingsbury machines.
And as a result of that, all the employees benefited with a profit sharing check. It would come out in November, right around Thanksgiving time, and with great anticipation, everybody was guessing on what the percentage would be.
Kingsbury developed multi-head machines for simultaneous multiple operations or sequential processing. Until the 1960s, they built rotary machines while continuing production even after introducing inline machines. Rotary machines used carriages rotating around circular tracks, stopping at stations for operations. Carriages could rotate or tilt to present different faces to horizontally, vertically, or angle-mounted heads. With 8 stops, 8 parts processed simultaneously throughout the machine.
You could put up to, I think it was 14 fixtures on a big 207 rotary machine, okay? So what you do, you take the rough casting, you take and put it on a fixture body, and it moves to station 1, rotates 1 station, okay, 1 index. And maybe that index has a milling operation, okay?
Right.
Then it will index to a second, then third, fourth, and it goes all around. Once you get the machine filled up with 14 units, you go ahead and put a part in, and that when the 14th unit indexes, you get a part completely manufactured.
Early machines operated independently with manual part transfers, but inline machines eventually linked together, allowing infinite stations compared to rotary limitations. All Kingsbury machines were custom built for specific parts, involving custom carriage track design, feeding mechanisms, and head placement. However, Kingsbury maintained inventories of standard bases and operational heads, typically combining existing components.
You had a base, you had knees, which, attached to the base. You had a column, which had heads that attached to the column. They would do the vertical holes, and the horizontal knees would do the horizontal holes in the fixture. And the heads could be, straight on, or they could be on an angle. And they even had vertical heads. They call them aftitudes. They would come down, and then the spindle would feed out on an angle to put a hole on a certain angle into the part. The heads themselves were standard, but all of the fine tuning was individual to each machine and to each station.
When jobs exceeded standard capability, truly custom machines were built, adding new bases or heads to inventory. Inline machines shared common bases and heads between sections with established carriage movement methodology requiring only part-specific adjustments. As the 1960s began, Kingsbury was about to undergo a major management change. Edward Kingsbury had turned over his presidential position to Gunnar Swanberg in 1955, but Kingsbury Machine was still a family business, and Edward continued as board chair. All 3 of HT's children worked for the company at some point. Edward's brother Chester worked with HT at the toy company, eventually becoming president, and moved over to the Machine Tool Company after the war. Although this role was gradually decreased due to depression caused by losing his son Beanie in that war.
That would greatly change my grandparents.
Edward's sister Lucy and her husband Allison Piper worked at Kingsbury, as did their son David. Their daughter Peggy was married to Charlie Hanrahan, and their son Mike would spend much of his career on Laurel Street. Edward's son Ted rose to second in command, and his son-in-law Henry, Hank Frechette, would also join the Kingsbury ranks. Hank had married Sally Kingsbury just prior to shipping out for a naval stint in World War II. He had cut his teeth in the business at Faro Machine and Foundry in Cleveland before replacing Chester as president of Kingsbury's subsidiary, Fitchburg Foundry, in 1948. The foundry had been purchased because Kingsbury's was having trouble acquiring much-needed castings after the war. 6 years later, Hank moved his family back to Keene and began working at the home office. In 1962, Swanberg was elevated to chairman of the board, and Hank was named president.
Then EJ had a very difficult decision, and EJ picked Hank Frechette, not a machine tool guy, not an engineer, not somebody who goes down on the floor and knows how those machines are running, or has in his basement, like Charlie Hanrahan did, and later Pete Warren, all kinds of fancy machines. EJ picked him to run the company, so that was clearly a very important decision in that company.
He was typical of the early culture. You felt it was a family company. He knew who you were.
From his new position, Frechette oversaw dramatic growth in the company. He traveled the world searching out new clients and developed partnerships with companies in Canada, England, and elsewhere in the United States.
We had 23 manufacturer representatives throughout the United States and approximately 15 trading partners internationally that Kingsbury had established throughout its long history of machine tools.
The employee roster grew from 300 to 1,000, and it was well known that Kingsbury was a good place to work.
People that were hired during the 60s felt Kingsbury was a womb-to-tomb company. Once you were employed there, you were going to retire there or they would carry you out, one or the other.
We were growing and we were buying a lot of capital equipment and we were hiring people, and profitability of the company was good, and the company was more than willing to share profits with employees through its profit sharing program.
Heard stories of people that had been there in the real big years where they'd get their check, they'd walk over to the Bailey Ford garage in the parking lot, buy a car, get change back from their check and go home. And during years that we actually had no profit, we actually had some years of significant loss, they still gave us a small amount. And everybody said, well, that's not what we used to. They didn't have to give us that. They didn't have to give us any of the profit sharing in reality. It was considered the right thing to do during the times that they did that.
They put retirement, pension. They did a great job. They invested their money wisely. And that's why I and the rest of the people are getting a pension at Kingsbury's.
It was a very complete company, and I mean complete in that not only did you work for the company, but there were a lot of outside activities that were sponsored by the company, whether it be golfing or softball or bowling league or, you know, any of those things.
Traditionally, in the summer picnic was a lobster bake and all the fixings. We had basketball teams, we had baseball teams, we had bowling teams, hockey teams.
There was some big summer fair or by a lake, and this fellow would sleep at the lake overnight the night before so nobody would steal the stocked fish that the company put in the water so the employees would enjoy catching them. All that sort of stuff, wonderful, right? Wrap your arms around people, very paternalistic.
The people, the culture appreciated the human value of the employees and their knowledge.
They allowed me to buy shares of the company twice, and I don't think there's too many places where I could have gone and have that happen, and certainly made a big difference in my life, and I'm very appreciative of that.
Hank was well respected throughout the industry, becoming president of the National Machine Tool Builders Association.
I was on the board, and we traveled together, both locally and putting on meetings in the various towns, but also we went to Russia together in 1972.
And when I came in 1975, it was a family-owned company. In January 1976, Hank died, and so there was concern, would the company remain a family-owned company?
The tragedy of Hank dying prematurely turned it topsy-turvy for I'd say a couple of years in my mind.
Sally or Priscilla decided that she wanted the company to have ownership in Keene and to remain in Keene instead of maybe selling to some conglomerate or somebody else in the machine tool industry.
Upon Frichette's death, Walter Burkhardt, who had been brought in to oversee manufacturing so Hank could focus on leading the business, took over the president's role for a couple of years before being replaced by Charlie Hanrahan.
When you had Hank Frechette, you had Charlie Hanrahan, Walter Burkhardt. Those were good years.
Walter Burkhardt was brought in from a competitor out in Michigan. He had been in the industry a very long time. He knew the business, he knew the product, he knew the customers.
Those are golden years, and people were very loyal to the company, and the presidents expected that, to be loyal to the company.
After Charlie retired, things started to change. Not that it wasn't still a good company, but you could feel there was a difference.
There was professional operators who had been with large companies in the Midwest, Walter Burkhardt, and then Jim Kuntz came in.
I was group executive and senior executive of Accello Corporation, which today is Textron. My association with Kingsbury, of course, was with Hank and also with Walter Burkhardt. They were good competitors in the early going, but I'd worked for years with Walter Burkhardt, starting with Bendix back in 56, 57. We went to Accello together, and then he left and came to Kingsbury, and then talked me into coming in 1978. December of 78, I decided to come.
So it changed from really being a family-run business to business run by people who had been in the industry for quite some time.
Kuntz was faced with a dramatic downturn in the machine tool industry nationwide, and a number of companies had to shut down. In an effort to keep Kingsbury profitable, as it had been every year since 1933, Kuntz was forced to reduce the employees from 1,000 to 600 over 5 years.
Jim tried to to bring the company into more modern times, which I think the machine tool industry was failing, worldwide.
During the time that he kept Kingsbury going, more than half of our competitors went out of business. So the fact that we kept going at all was actually probably a big credit to him and what he was able to do.
If you look at the whole industry, there are no players left. I mean, Lamb is gone, Jones and Lampson's gone, Bryant's gone, everybody's gone.
Jim made a valiant effort to change the company's direction in terms of Kingsbury was becoming a dinosaur, and he tried to get the company into the later 20th century with a lot of computer-controlled equipment.
So it was changing times that you had to get ready to change. And, I'm not sure we could have changed.
There were many reasons for the dwindling profits, including foreign competition and customers' desire to refurbish old machines rather than buy new ones. Kingsbury was also a victim of its own success. By creating sophisticated machines that could replace processing lines that required multiple separate machines, they reduced overall tool demand.
When I talked to people at Ford and General Motors and places when I went out there, they would say kind of the same thing. They actually would say, you guys shot yourself in the foot. Because if you had put a little less effort into this, it would have failed 5 years ago and we'd have to buy another one from you. I heard that more than once, that the only problem with Kingsbury is they were too good.
Kingsbury's whole thing was, we are a high precision engineered to order manufacturer of high volume capital equipment. The high volume went away.
And the volumes became lower. The demand for the real, special engineered high production rotary index and transfer line products began to, in my mind, decline.
As the profits dried up, so too did some employee benefits. Profit sharing that had been a staple of Kingsbury employment dwindled to nothing because there were no profits to share, and eventually the floor workers voted to unionize.
The UAW had focused on Kingsbury over the years numerous times, and they made 3 more attacks in the mid-1990s. And on the 3rd try, after whittling down their membership group that they were going to try and solicit, they were successful in getting a union in.
And no, I'm not being critical of unions. Neither side is on the side of the angels. Okay, I just want to be very clear about that.
It was difficult times. You have a pro-union bunch of people and an anti-union people from the management.
I was not in favor of unionization.
I was against the union. And it's you don't need a union if you treat your people right, okay?
But it was hard going down on the floor, and you could feel a little tension sometimes.
I saw it when I was in customers' plants. People would come in to do a project, and it could take them 10 minutes, but they were getting paid for 6 hours, so they went and sat in a chair for 6 hours and then went home.
Oh.
And to me, that's a waste of money.
I remember when I first went down on the floor and the union was getting going, my first visit to a machine to help bring it up and running, there was a fellow down there who was kind of in control of the machine. Me and another fellow went down, and he wouldn't let us on the machine. So I told my supervisor they won't let us on the machine. And that afternoon, they asked that fellow to go home, and we got on the machine.
I think going through the union campaigns and dividing the workforce, it was traumatic. It was gut-wrenching to have something like that happen.
But with the industry in free fall, there wasn't a lot that management could do.
The progression was that the company was elderly and it needed to be sold. And there were certain things that had to be done to facilitate that.
Jim, having his incredible sense of what was happening in the industry and the economy, said this is the time. If we don't sell now, there's going to be nothing left to sell in the not too distant future.
More than 100 years after H.T. Kingsbury bought the Wilkins Toy Company, its spin-off Kingsbury Machine Tool Company finally left the family. In 1998, it was sold to Iris Metropolis, a Massachusetts native who hoped to keep the business going in Keene.
She walked in and she had very good leather, because I like to travel, right? So I could see that her coat and purse, that was Italian leather. So I knew this woman came from money someplace. I'm thinking, this is her. Jim Kuntz knew the industry, the business, machine tool, industrial policy. She was a financial person. Her view of things was different.
When Iris took over, everybody was very happy. We all had meetings. We all sit down with her as a group, and a lot of us sit down with her one-on-one and made suggestions, comments to her, how the company could improve, what she could do to help her own company. And we were all excited at that time because she took a lot of notes, and at first she started doing some of the things that the people suggested. And then it just went along where she wasn't listening anymore.
It didn't take long for her to experience some of the same issues that had bedeviled the company in the first century. In 2005, Beaver Brook flooded once again, and more than a foot of water covered the factory floor. And another downturn in the industry forced Kingsbury to file for bankruptcy in 2011. Names and physical assets were sold to a company in Rochester, New York, but eventually faded out.
I went to Octopnation for 2 years, and they had an office in Swansea. And I would travel, I would work in the office, and every 2 weeks I would travel to Rochester. And I'd work out there for 2 weeks, come back and work in the office here for 2 weeks. And I did that for 2 years, and that got old.
In 1992, Edward Kingsbury was elected to the Machine Tool Hall of Fame for the concept of placing drilling units around a rotary table to achieve high production through simultaneous multiple station drilling, the beginning of the rotary transfer machine. Though the machines have stopped running in Keene, the legacy of Kingsbury continues, in the town it built, in the machines still running in plants around the world, and in the lives it touched.
Kingsbury's are still out there running strong. Some of the ones that I built for TRW are still in Queen Creek, and they're still running.
There's something absolutely vital about having an economic engine to enhance and subsidize it for the people of the community and the region. That's what Kingsbury did. And it built great product too, by the way.